one ship was able to freeze global trade.
We want love, we want peace, we want equality!
There are
A traditional recipe, and it's really very delicious.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, world is one.
Vielleicht nur als Impulsant.
Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started. Have you heard of Murphy's Law? Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's Joe Biden's Afghanistan plan, a series of blunders, criminal mistakes that have cost lives. More than 100 people dead, including 13 American soldiers. It's tragic. Until it becomes bizarre. The Taliban have issued condemnation, a terror group condemning a terror attack. How does that even work? Because now apparently the Taliban are the moderate terrorists. Another made-in-Pakistan group, the ISIS-Khorasan, are the extremist terrorists, the more radical lot. So the Americans are prepared to work with the moderate terrorists to defeat the extremist terrorists. And if this is making you uneasy, I've got more. A number of experts we've spoken to tell us that this attack comes as a blessing for some parties, like the Taliban, because now the world has a legit reason to engage and share intelligence with them. And for the US, because now they have a reason to maintain a diplomatic, even military presence in Kabul. What about the Afghan people? For them, it's one endless nightmare. The perpetrators change. On Gravitas tonight, we'll bring you all of these stories and more. Where does the killing of 13 American soldiers leave Joe Biden? In a political mess, there are calls for impeachment. There's blood on the president's hands, they say. Who is the new villain in the story? The ISKP, the Islamic State of the Khorasan province. Who are they? What do they want? We'll bring you a special report. What is next for the Taliban? They don't have a government. They don't have an emir. But they have a civil war to deal with already, with all kinds of terror groups prepared to fight them for power. And a story you won't find in most of the international press. American states are running out of ICU beds and oxygen supplies as Wuhan virus cases explode. Why isn't the media reporting it? Because the US is not India. We'll discuss. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
US forces put an alert in Kabul for more attacks after the Islamic State suicide bomber killed at least 100 people, including 13 soldiers outside the gates of Kabul airport. This after the Islamic State, Khorasan or ISIS-K, an affiliate of the ISIS group, claimed responsibility for the attack at Kabul airport. Dozens of students at an Islamic seminary in Nigeria have been freed from captivity. On May 30th, 200 armed men invaded the town of Tegina in the Niger state and kidnapped 136 students from a school in the area. Nigeria has been witnessing a spate of mass kidnappings from schools and universities. The UN chief Antonio Guterres warns of a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Ethiopia's Tigray region.
All parties must recognize a simple truth: there is no military solution.
Calling for an immediate ceasefire and the launch of a national political dialogue. U.S. Capitol Police officers sue former President Donald Trump over the January 6 riots, alleging that Trump incited the Capitol attack and conspired to prevent the certification of the presidential election. Top Chinese actress Zheng Shuang has been hit with a $46 million tax evasion fine as Beijing steps up its campaign against celebrity culture. Meanwhile, references to film star Xiao Wei were wiped out from video streaming sites and social media. Tech major Microsoft warns thousands of customers and some of the world's largest companies that intruders may be able to read, change or delete their main databases. The move highlights the vulnerability in Microsoft's flagship database. Scientists say that a blob of warm water in the southern Pacific is fueling a mega drought in Chile, yet again highlighting the consequences of climate change. The blob, which is wider than the continental United States, is 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than it was 40 years ago. The crisis deepens across the U.S. state of California as some 14,000 firefighters battling changing weather conditions to contain more than a dozen large wildfires across the state. Juventus manager Massimiliano Allegri has confirmed that Cristiano Ronaldo has asked to leave the club. Allegri said that the 36-year-old Portuguese forward has no intention of playing for Juventus again and has been left out of the squad for Saturday's Serie A clash against Empoli. The five-time World Player of the Year was heavily linked with a move to Manchester City earlier, but the English champions have now pulled out, and it now appears that a return to Manchester United is on the cards. Two-time Olympic champion Shelly Ann Fraser-Pryce ran the third fastest 100 meters of all time at the Diamond League meeting in Lausanne. The Jamaican posted a time of 10.60 seconds and avenged her defeat to compatriot Elaine Thompson-Herah at the Olympic Games. Thompson-Herah finished second after posting the second fastest time ever just 5 days ago at 10.54 seconds.
"24 hours after the suicide bombings, Afghans are still counting their losses. More than 100 people have died, hundreds more are injured. In the next 10 minutes, we'll bring you the most comprehensive ground report on the situation in Afghanistan. Our correspondent in Kabul, Anas Malik, is standing by to give us a live update. He's been going to the Kabul airport every day to bring you what's happening. He was there at the site of the blast a day before that blast happened. He was there yesterday night and he's back with us tonight. Anas, we'll come to you in just a bit. First, let's bring our viewers up to speed with what has happened today and what we know about the attack. Just a short while ago, the US Defense Department issued a statement. It took them 24 hours to confirm how many blasts had taken place. 24 hours. The US State Department now says there was only one suicide bomber and there was no second explosion. The Islamic State says it was behind the attack, more specifically the ISIS-K, the Islamic State Khorasan. This is a regional version of the ISIS. You could say the Pakistani version of the ISIS. We'll bring you a special report on this later in the show. And here's something worth noting. Thursday was the deadliest day for American forces in Afghanistan in more than a decade. A total of 13 American soldiers were killed in action. Hours after these attacks, one attack is what we're being told now, there were reports of a third explosion in Kabul. This was a controlled explosion by the US military. They were destroying some ammunition, but the terror threat is not yet over. Reports say terrorists could target the airport again. American intelligence input suggests that there could be at least 7 ISIS bombers on the loose. They left from a mosque in central Kabul after Friday prayers today. Journalists have been asked to stay away from the airport. They could be on target next. What are the US and its allies doing about all of this? They're hastening the withdrawal. They want to leave as soon as possible. They're leaving Afghans behind, those who might need help. Spain, Canada, Belgium, the Netherlands, Australia, they've all ended their operations. France, the United Kingdom and Italy were supposed to end their evacuations by this evening too. The United States is expected to carry on, but they have only 4 more days left to airlift everyone. And there are thousands still waiting outside. The longer they're made to wait, the higher the risk of another terrorist attack. What happens when the Americans leave? Will the evacuation stop? Will the Taliban control the Kabul airport then? No, says Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He says Turkey will run the Kabul airport. And that this offer has come from the Taliban themselves. President Erdogan said Turkey is still considering the offer. What about India's evacuation efforts? New Delhi today issued a statement. Most Indian citizens in Afghanistan have been evacuated, they said. India has been able to fly out more than 40 Afghan Hindus and Sikhs. So there is no immediate cause for alarm. But New Delhi is concerned about the situation in Afghanistan, in Kabul. What about the Taliban? What are they doing? Issuing condemnation and investigating the terrorist attack. This is what things have come to, really. A terror group has taken power and is talking about ending the cycle of evil, conducting an investigation. What have they found? Nothing that the world doesn't already know about. The blasts were a result of the security breach at the gate that was controlled by the US forces. That's what the Taliban have been able to establish so far. That's what they've stated. Remember, they don't have a government and no proper mechanisms in place to deal with the aftermath of a terror strike. But they're acting the part. They're holding press conferences, talking to foreign diplomats, tweeting propaganda videos, even dishing out unsolicited advice. Can you really be an international player without commenting on Kashmir and advising India? So the Taliban are doing it. It's epic. A Taliban spokesperson has said that India and Pakistan should sit across the table to talk about Kashmir and New Delhi should have a positive attitude. This is a terror group speaking. Who asked the Taliban what India should do in Kashmir? The Pakistani press. It's crazy, it's twisted, it's unbelievable. But then again, in a post-COVID world, nothing seems like a stretch. So Pakistani media is broadcasting Taliban advice to India on Kashmir. They may also want to report on what's happening in Kabul, the Taliban beating up civilians right in the middle of the road. This is the real face of the Taliban. This is what Afghans are fleeing. Look at this carefully. The United Nations put a number to their desperation, 500,000 they said. The UN said up to 500,000 Afghans could leave the country in the weeks ahead. Tens of thousands have already left by air and by road, even on foot, walking hundreds of miles. Many of them end up at the Pakistan border. Now look at these pictures. A sea of Afghans. This checkpost is in Spin Boldak, a tsunami of refugees trying to enter Pakistan. This is Islamabad's reward for driving a country to ruin. Now let's go to Kabul. Our correspondent Anas Malik has been reporting from Afghanistan. He's been bringing us reports from in and around Kabul. He's seen it all, the fall of the civilian government, the takeover of the Taliban, and now the terrorist attack in Kabul. Anas, 24 hours ago, you were reporting from the exact location where the attack took place. What's the situation like now? Has anything changed in Kabul?
Well, certainly the situation is pretty grim. Kabul is mourning. It wore a deserted look today. I went around the city. I tried accessing the location where the bomb blast took place, where we were reporting from just last night, and the location was out of bounds. There were people there again where we were reporting from yesterday in the afternoon, where the blast took place. There was people still there, but in slighter numbers. Not as many as they were earlier, because we've been reporting there from there earlier as well, and we've seen a sea of people, but the number of people over there had drastically reduced. But the blast did not deter them from staying back at their homes, because they're so desperate to go abroad or to flee the country and to flee the wrath of the Taliban. This is what I have witnessed. At least 3 checkpoints that the Taliban had put up. They were thoroughly checking, and they were preventing people, even if you had that special permit that has been issued by the Taliban's Afghan Ministry of Culture and Information. Despite of that, they were not allowing anybody, and at least I was not able to make it. At the North Gate, where the Afghan Army or the ANDSF are in charge, we saw that a number of people had been alleging that they had valid SIV certification and visas as well, yet they were not allowed to go through. They were alleged that only those with green card holders or the US passports are only allowed to go through. That is a claim, because it could not be independently verified during the time I was there. We've seen the Italian mission wrap up as well, and with that, the NATO senior civil representative Stefano Pontecorvo, he's also left the country just a while back, in about 3 to 4 hours back. On the other hand, when I talk to you about the investigations, the Taliban now say that their head of intelligence unit in Kabul, whose name is Maulvi Naeem Rehbari, he is in charge of the investigation, and they claim of making headway in this. That will soon be revealed to media. What sources say that they claim to have arrested 3 people linked with this heinous act. Palki?
Right. There are also reports that the security situation is dangerous, that the airport could be targeted again. What is the threat perception, and how does this impact the evacuation effort on us?
Well, the evacuation effort has clearly taken a hit. Yesterday, day before yesterday, we saw about 19,000 people being evacuated. Yesterday, that number switched down till about 11,000, and we haven't heard back from the Pentagon as yet on the latest evacuation numbers. We expect that to be somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000, because during the in the run-up to the attack and after the attack hours, we saw evacuation coming to a halt. The US evacuation has taken a hit as well, because their partners, the Qatari government, today ran the last coaster or ferry service, as one would say it, which was basically escorting SIV applicants from a particular location to the military side of the airport, from where they would be boarding the flight to Doha 40 days in Doha, and then onwards to the US. So today was that last coaster out from that very location. So that has clearly taken a hit with regards to the evacuation efforts. We're seeing that a lot of desperate Afghans are there now. As time passes by, it is becoming increasingly clear that not all of the deserving candidates, or not all of them who have worked in any capacity, would be actually able to make it out to freedom. The flight to freedom, they would not be able to catch that. Palki?
Right, Anas Malik, thanks very much for holding fort for us there in Kabul. And I know that this is a very, very unstable situation. There is a threat perception. Stay safe is all I can say. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Until now, America was on the run. Today it is being hunted. Joe Biden said he will not send American soldiers to die in Afghanistan. Well, yesterday 13 of them were killed, 1-3, in Afghanistan by the same terrorists that Biden claimed to have vanquished. This is not a blunder anymore. It is criminal oversight and negligence. By some miracle, Joe Biden was in the White House and not on vacation, like when the attacks happened yesterday. For 2 hours, he was holed up in the Situation Room. Then he emerged to face the media. Biden channeled a mix of aggression and pain. He promised to hunt down the perpetrators of Thursday's attack. You have to listen to this.
To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay. I will defend our interests and our people with every measure at my command.
Hollywood-style threats sound great, but what's the plan here? By the 31st of August, the last US troops will leave Afghanistan. No soldiers, no intelligence, no ground operations. So how will Joe Biden strike Islamic State targets? One option is an airstrike, but don't forget, the US does not have a military base in Afghanistan. The closest one is probably in Qatar. That's nearly 2,000 kilometers away. It's way too risky. But what if the US had inside help? I'm talking about the Taliban. They point out targets and America takes them out. 2 former rivals joined in combat. Stranger things have happened in world politics. Joe Biden has admitted that the Pentagon is constantly talking to the Taliban. He expects them to play fair. Why? Because apparently it is in the Taliban's self-interest.
They're not good guys, the Taliban. We're not suggesting that at all. But they have keen interest. As many of you have been reporting, they very much would like to figure out how to keep the airport open. They don't have the capacity to do it. They very much are trying to figure out whether or not they can maintain what is the portion of an economy that has become not robust, but fundamentally different than it had been.
Strange, isn't it? How the Taliban's so-called self-interest mysteriously aligns with America's. How is this playing out in American politics? Not well for Joe Biden. Dozens of Republican lawmakers are demanding his resignation. Some of them want him impeached. So far, Joe Biden's strategy has been to duck and divert. Well, he can't do that anymore. 13 American soldiers are dead. 1,000 Americans are still stuck in Kabul, and the Taliban are now window shopping US weapons. I'll show you an example. This is a video from the Kandahar airport. The Taliban are taking a Black Hawk helicopter for a test ride. That's a $21 million chopper. The Taliban are taking it for a spin, and this is just one example. American lawmakers say $85 billion worth of US equipment is with the Taliban.
That due to the negligence of this administration, the Taliban now has access to over $85 billion worth of American military equipment. That includes 75,000 vehicles, over 200 airplanes and helicopters, over 600,000 small arms and light weapons. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world.
What's the plan to recover these weapons? There isn't one. The Taliban are not going to just hand it back, so all Joe Biden can do is keep his fingers crossed. You would think it's a gamble. But for the US, it is another reason to engage with the Taliban. We've been seeing it from day one. Biden's bravado on beating terrorism is hogwash. The Pentagon says both ISIS and Al-Qaeda retain a presence in Afghanistan. So what does the US do? Cut deals with the new rulers of Afghanistan. That is the Taliban. Earlier this week, CIA Director William Burns visited Kabul. He reportedly met with Taliban leader Mullah Baradar. It's all kinds of strange. First, the meeting was kept a secret. Second, what job does the CIA have in evacuation? Clearly, there's more at play here. America has never been shy of dealing with the devil. They have funded rebels, insurgents, all kind of bad actors. They've created terror groups. The Taliban would be another addition, or should I say a re-addition, since the US has a history with some of its old lot. Yesterday's attack was a sneak peek into the Taliban's future. A shadow war is on the cards, and the Taliban are in no shape to handle it. They will need American intelligence and American military. For the US, the Taliban is a lesser evil now. What stands between them and Islamic State? Is this an evil nexus? Yes, it is. But what else can we expect from the Americans? 20 years of espionage and shadow games have taught them nothing. That's the thing about forever wars. The hangover is forever too. For the Afghans, this is a series of wars, one spilling into another, dissolving into an endless nightmare. In the 1990s, the Taliban took power after a brutal civil war between Mujahideen factions, a civil war that destroyed most of Kabul. 2 decades on, the Taliban are back in power, and another civil war looks inevitable. If there were any doubts about it, the events of Thursday evening have settled them all. The ISIS-Khorasan have taken responsibility for the attack, and they're not the only terror group looking to challenge the Taliban's rule now. Ever since the US began withdrawing troops, Afghanistan has become a melting pot of terrorists of all hues. They will all want a share of the Kabul pie. They will all want influence in the Taliban's emirate. Which outfits are we talking about? There's Al-Qaeda, which is spread all over Afghanistan. There's Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, AQIS. It operates in the southeastern provinces. Then we have the Haqqani network, which operates along the Pak-Afghan border. And then there's the ISKP, the Islamic State in the Khorasan province. This is the Taliban's sworn enemy. So we have 4 major terror groups. Then we have many smaller ones, like the Tehreek-e-Taliban, the Eastern Turkestan movement, the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, which is another ISIS affiliate and a sworn enemy of the Taliban. Besides these, there are a host of Pakistani terror outfits whose members are operating as advisors and commanders and administrators with the Taliban. Groups like the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Lashkar-e-Jangvi, the Lashkar-e-Mohammed, Mujahideen United Council, the Maulvi Nazir Group, all of them based in Pakistan, but they operate in Afghanistan and Kashmir. We've been telling you how these terrorists have been relocating to Afghanistan since June. According to a United Nations report, between 8,000 and 10,000 foreign terrorists have recently entered Afghanistan. They have settled in the provinces of Kunar, Nangarhar, Helmand, Kandahar, Ghazni, Khost, Logar, Paktia, and Paktika. In these provinces, the number of Lashkar terrorists alone is estimated to be 7,200. Others are said to be regrouping by the thousands. The question is, who controls these terrorists? Where do their loyalties lie? Well, some of them support the Taliban, some support the Al-Qaeda, and some support the ISIS. They all may be united in pushing Western forces out of Afghanistan, but they're not united in how to rule Afghanistan. The ISIS-K does not consider the Taliban hardline enough. The Taliban think the ISIS-K is too radical, talk about power politics and terrorist groups. And make no mistake, the Taliban are not equipped to control all of these groups. They have neither the money nor the infrastructure. What about support? The more the Taliban cooperate with Washington, the more they'll be alienated from their terrorist base. They will be seen as the new enemy. And to make things worse, the Taliban themselves are not united. They're not one group. They have competing factions, Political figures like Mullah Baradar, who was part of the peace talks in Doha, and military commanders like Mohammad Yaqub, who are not as conciliatory. The Taliban are a fragmented lot. It may take weeks, even months, to establish clarity on who will rule Afghanistan and how. Like I said, a civil war looks imminent, and once it begins, it will be almost impossible to strike a settlement because there are too many hatchets to be buried, too many conflicts to be resolved, and too many terrorists out on the loose, armed to the teeth, drunk on power, and with no sense on how to use it. And here's one such group, adamant on anarchy, the ISIS-K, the Islamic State of Khorasan province. They have claimed responsibility for Thursday's attack, but their ambitions are much bigger. They want to create an Islamic caliphate in Central and South Asia. I'll start with some recent history. ISIS-K was created in the year 2015, around the same time as the Islamic State, which was expanding its caliphate in West Asia. This group is often called the Afghan branch of ISIS. Well, they have the same name, the same appetite for brutality, but there are key differences too. The ISIS-K expanded by poaching terrorists from the Al-Qaeda and from the Taliban and from extremists in Pakistan. And these terrorists were reportedly disenchanted. And wait till you hear why. Why did they want to leave? Apparently for them, the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban were not radical enough. It tells you everything you need to know about the ISIS-Khorasan. They're as extreme goes. The most brutal of the lot. Their first stronghold was Afghanistan's Nangarhar province. Guess which country borders Nangarhar? Pakistan. That's where ISIS-K got supplies and fighters from. They may have pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, but the orders were coming from Islamabad. How did Pakistan control this monster? Using their proxy called the Haqqani network. Think of them as the brutal security wing of the Taliban. The ISIS-K and the Haqqani network have always collaborated. When the Taliban overran Kabul, they released dozens of ISIS terrorists from Afghan jails. Both sides deny these links. ISIS-K says the Taliban are rivals. Well, to some extent, that's true. For them, the Taliban are sellouts. They cut deals with the Americans at posh hotels in Doha. But there's more to this story. Afghan leader Amarullah Saleh believes the Taliban and ISIS-K are hand in glove. Remember, this is a former spy master and a vice president. He's probably been at dozens of intel briefings, and he says the ISIS-Khorasan have their roots in Taliban and the Haqqani network. Is that really surprising? Both are terror groups, both have radical views on Islam, both operate in the same region. It is naive to think there is absolutely no relationship. The real difference, though, is in objectives. The Taliban wanted to create an Islamic emirate in Afghanistan, and they've done that. The ISIS-Khorasan have bigger dreams. They want to build an Islamic state in Central and South Asia, a region that is called Khorasan. Let me pull up the map for you. Just to be clear, this region, Khorasan, does not exist anymore. It's a historical reference. Ancient Khorasan included parts of Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, and some versions also include Pakistan. When ISIS talks about Khorasan, it is not just a geography, it's a throwback to the glory days of Islam, when Central Asia was ruled by a caliphate. The sentiment is relevant, the borders are not. Some jihadists also link Khorasan to the apocalypse. They believe the flag of Islam will emerge from here at the end of times. Zealots have their own interpretations, but the fact is Khorasan is long gone. There are sovereign countries in that location. Just like the West Asian Caliphate, this one too was doomed to fail. Today, ISIS-K is a weakened organization. They have around 3,000 fighters left, but with coalition troops gone now, they can regroup. Intelligence reports had alluded to this threat. The US had said that there was an acute and persistent threat from ISIS-Khorasan, but they did nothing about it. So this threat could expand beyond Afghanistan. The question is, what options do we have to respond? The Trump administration was clear-eyed. In 2017, they dropped the MOAB on ISIS targets. What's that? The mother of all bombs, MOAB. Well, Biden does not have that option. He has no troops. He has no air bases in Afghanistan. How will he do that? So if ISIS-Khorasan grows unchecked, where does that leave the region? What can countries like India do? The most pressing issue is radicalization. There is evidence of Indian youth being recruited into ISIS-Khorasan. In March 2020, they attacked a Gurdwara in Kabul. One of the attackers was an Indian national. The threat is certainly real, and the world is appointing the Taliban to control it. You could say this is another version of the good Taliban, bad Taliban debate. And don't forget the common denominator here, Pakistan. They have nurtured many snakes, some more poisonous than others. Here's another one, the Haqqani network. We now know that it often collaborates with the ISIS-Khorasan. We also know that the Haqqani network is part of the Taliban. It is the Taliban's most feared wing, the most ruthless. Today, the Haqqani network is in charge of Kabul's security. It will soon officially rule Kabul. How did this terror group become so powerful? Who runs the Haqqani network, and how did it become the club for some of Afghanistan's most dreaded terrorists? Our next report has all the answers.
Look at this man closely. His name is Jalaluddin Haqqani. He is the founder of the Haqqani network. In the 1980s, Jalaluddin was quite a hero, a prized asset of the CIA. His network was among the first to raise arms against the Soviets. The United States and Pakistan backed the Haqqani network's jihad. Things changed around 1996. Taliban rose to power. The Haqqani network merged with the terror group, but it maintained a degree of independence. Jalaluddin Haqqani died around 2018. By then, his son, Sirajuddin, had taken charge. Under his leadership, the terror group carried out some of the deadliest attacks in Afghanistan. In 2008, the Haqqanis tried to assassinate then Afghan President Hamid Karzai. The network was involved in the 2008 and 2009 suicide attack on the Indian embassy. It played a major role in the 2011 attack on the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul. The same year, the Haqqanis participated in a day-long attack across Kabul, starting from the US Embassy to the Afghan Presidential Palace and the NDS headquarters. A year later, there was a hearing before the US Subcommittee on Terrorism, Non-Proliferation and Trade. The focus was on combating the Haqqani network. Here's what the committee noted. This outfit has built an empire out of kidnappings, out of extortion, out of their smuggling operations, Arab donors from the Middle East, trucking firms, car dealerships, real estate. In 2013, Afghan forces intercepted a truck bomb deployed by the Haqqanis. It had 61,500 pounds of explosives. In short, the terror group had built the largest ever truck bomb. As the Haqqani network acquired a reputation for ruthlessness, Sirajuddin rose up the ranks of the Taliban. In 2015, he was appointed as one of the 3 deputies under the Taliban's top leader, Mullah Haibatullah Akhundzada. This made the Haqqani network all the more prominent. Remember the Taliban op-ed in the New York Times? It was written by Sirajuddin Haqqani. Today, the Haqqani network is the most feared wing of the Taliban. It has close links to the Al-Qaeda and operates out of eastern Afghanistan. The Paktia province is its stronghold. Its second home is Pakistan's North Waziristan. The terror group has set up madrasas in the town of Ghulam Khan. Does Pakistan know about it? Of course it does. What has it done about it? Nothing. The Haqqani network is a UN-designated terror group. Today, it is calling the shots in Kabul. It is actively involved in the government formation and has been entrusted with Kabul's security. The Haqqani network is also one of the most feared terror groups in Afghanistan, and now it is going to officially rule it. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Terrorists on the loose, proxies waging civil war, and an economy on the brink of collapse. Afghanistan desperately needs a government. Unfortunately, it is being forced to wait. We've asked this question before. Where is the Emir of Afghanistan? We know his name, Maulavi Hibatullah Akhundzada. The Taliban call him their supreme leader, but that's about it. Where is he based? Is he alive? Is he even real? Nobody knows. This is a man who lurks in the shadows. If you Google Akhundzada, exactly one picture pops up, just one. Let's assume this picture is real. How recent is it? Does Akhundzada still look the same? Again, nobody knows. Terror leaders never lead flashy lives, but this one is especially camera shy. Akhundzada was appointed as the Taliban supreme leader in 2016. No one really expected him to get the job. Why? Because he was a religious leader, not a military commander. So where is this so-called religious leader preaching nowadays? There are many theories, dozens of reports, but all of them lead to one country, Pakistan, the lost and found box of Islamic terror. Earlier this week, I spoke to Afghan leader Amrullah Saleh about Akhundzada's whereabouts. He believes the Taliban supreme leader is at an ISI safe house. Listen in.
What is very, very clear is we are not surrendering, we will not surrender, and we will not express allegiance to an emirate whose emir has not been seen by the Afghans, and most likely, even tonight, he is staying in an ISI safe house.
But what have you heard of the leader Akhundzada? Where is the emir of this new emirate of Afghanistan?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if he is really, in Afghanistan, they have to show him. He has to speak. So a lot of the Taliban leaders who have now come to Kabul, they have come from Pakistan.
Can't say I'm surprised. The ISI is rated highly as a host for foreign terrorists. The safe houses / guest houses can be found all over the country. Let me show you. We'll start with Akhundzada's predecessor, Akhtar Mansoor. In 2016, he was killed by a US drone strike. Where? Ahmad Wali in Balochistan, Pakistan. Osama bin Laden, killed in a US operation in 2011. He was living in a private compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. He was neighbors with the Pakistani army. Osama bin Laden's successor also lives in Pakistan, Ayman al-Zawahiri. The United Nations says he is based near the Pak-Afghan border. Apparently, he's too frail to appear in propaganda videos. Hope the ISI are taking good care of him. Now we have the current lot of Taliban leaders, Mullah Baradar. He was arrested from Karachi, Pakistan in 2010. Pakistan took credit for his arrest. But why was Baradar in Karachi in the first place? How did he get there? No answers. Sirajuddin Haqqani, another senior Taliban leader. The FBI says he is living in Miran Shah in Pakistan. Dawood Ibrahim, narco-terrorist, the mastermind of the 1993 Mumbai blasts, attending weddings and living the club life in Karachi, Pakistan. Masood Azhar, the founder of Jaish-e-Mohammed, reportedly living in a bomb shelter in Bahawalpur, Pakistan, and guarding him are Pakistani soldiers. These are just some of the big names. Collectively, these men have killed thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people. They have bounties worth millions of dollars on their head. Simply put, they are the worst of humanity, and Pakistan is collecting them. By the way, these are not Pakistani nationals, not all of them. Osama bin Laden was from Saudi Arabia. Zawahiri is from Egypt. Akhtar Mansoor was an Afghan. Dawood Ibrahim is from India. How is it that every notorious terrorist ends up in Pakistan? Because Islamabad uses terror as state policy. The ISI cultivates terrorist leaders, gives them a new home, gives them protection. In return, they do Pakistan's dirty work, whether it's attacking Indian cities, putting proxies in Kabul, or sabotaging Western nations. All of this is common knowledge. Even the Prime Minister of Pakistan has admitted that his country trained and used terrorists.
हमने उनको इस्तेमाल किया, हमने सेक्टेरियन किलर्स को पाला, हमारी एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ने खुद पाला. मैं उस मीटिंग में एक दिन था तो उससे पास सहाबा के लोग मेरे पास आए और मुझे उन्होंने कहा कि हमारी ये आज से कई साल पहले की बात है कि हम आपको समझते हैं कि आप एक सीधी बात करने वाले हैं, तो हमारी शियों से दोस्ती करवा दें. मैंने कहा अच्छा, तो क्या प्रॉब्लम क्या? कहते जी हमें एस्टेब्लिशमेंट इस्तेमाल करती है, जब चाहती है लड़ा देती है आपस में, और जब चाहती है. मैं हैरान रह गया.
You've heard it from the Prime Minister himself now. So why is the word silent? Because apparently Pakistan was a strategic partner. The US needed Islamabad to control Kabul. Look where it got them. Pakistan was playing a cruel double game. When Americans rained fire, Pakistan took in Taliban leaders, offered them protection and weapons, and now the Taliban are repaying that debt. Their spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid called Pakistan a second home. He says the new emirate will deepen strategic ties with Pakistan. They call it strategic ties, but it's actually more of a terror nexus. And I can already see the headlines. Bilateral trade of weapons, people-to-people exchange of terrorists. So don't be surprised if Hibatullah Akhundzada emerges from Pakistan, and chances are he will. But what happens until then? How long can Afghanistan remain in a limbo? An emirate without an emir, a regime with no government and rulers with no sense of law. The new Islamic emirate is much like its leader, obscure yet deadly. Miles away from the Afghan chaos, Bangladesh is witnessing a rise in Islamist fundamentalists. Pro-Taliban sentiments are growing in the country. Social media platforms are flooded with posts of sympathy. Many Bangladeshis have left their homes to join the Taliban, and dormant terror groups have become active once again. They're all looking to regroup and hire new recruits. Our next report tells you how Bangladesh is feeling the repercussions of the Taliban's comeback.
The Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan is fueling fears of a rise in fundamentalism across Asia. In some countries, this fear is slowly turning into reality. Like Bangladesh, which is witnessing a surge of pro-Taliban sentiments. In recent days, social media platforms in Bangladesh have been flooded with posts of sympathy for the Taliban. "Go ahead, Taliban," and "a victory of Islam" are some reoccurring phrases in these posts. The sympathy is not limited to social media. According to Dhaka's chief police commissioner, the Taliban had issued a call for people to join their war. A day before Kabul fell, many Bangladeshis left their homes in response. He further stated that it is our assessment that some people from Bangladesh have been caught in India, and some are trying to reach Afghanistan on foot in various ways. This was last week. A few months back, when the Taliban's offensive had just begun, Bangladesh's most circulated newspaper had reported that the banned Ansar al-Islam terror group was recruiting Bangladeshis to fight with the Taliban. The newspaper also claimed that some members of the group had already traveled from Chittagong to Pakistan by sea, and many others were being encouraged to do the same. This terror group is not alone. According to the Center for Terrorism Research in Bangladesh, terror outfits like Harkat-ul-Jihad al-Islami and Jamaat-ul-Mujahideen, both of which are led by Afghan returnees, are looking to regroup and spread the Taliban's ideology in Bangladesh. The question is, how worried should Bangladesh be? The country's problem with Islamist fundamentalism is not as serious as Pakistan's. But given the rise in pro-Taliban sentiments, the re-emergence of dormant terror outfits and reports of Bangladeshis going to join the Taliban, Dhaka must be on guard if it isn't already. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Here's a story you will not find anywhere else. It's not online. It's not on the headlines of any Western news network. This story is about America's COVID crisis, one that the Western media has brushed under the carpet, and Western news agencies have conveniently forgotten to file. Full disclosure, we had a very hard time finding details and pictures and videos in order to put this story together for you, because there was nothing on the wires, but we had to tell this story because everyone else has chosen not to. Did you know Florida will run out of oxygen in less than 24 hours? Texas has already run out of COVID beds. There are no ICU beds left in Alabama. Oregon, too, has a shortage of ICU beds. More than 95% of ICU beds are occupied in Georgia. Beds are also running out in Houston. Did you know all of this? How will you? The news agencies that zoomed into visuals of people sharing a bed in India's hospitals have somehow gone into recess during America's Delta crisis. The news channels that reported live from India's crematoriums have not filed a single report on Florida. The state's crematoriums are overwhelmed. Locals say bodies have been stacked to the ceiling. Why is no one telling you all of this? Where is the press? What kind of selective reporting is this? Who exactly is the Western media trying to please? As we speak, more than 100,000 people have been hospitalized with the Wuhan virus in America. This is the highest in 8 months. There has been a 12% increase in new cases, 23% increase in deaths, 77.3% of all ICU beds in the United States of America are occupied, and cases are rising by the day. Let's look at Florida. For most of this week, the state recorded an average of 227 daily COVID deaths. This is 30% higher than January. That's when Florida saw its previous peak. On Thursday, the 26th of August, the state reported 901 COVID deaths, the highest since the pandemic began. As for cases between the 13th and 19th of August, Florida recorded more than 150,000 new COVID cases, a daily average of 23,314. There's been a 19.8% increase in cases. This is according to the Florida Health Department. The numbers are worrying, scary. Why is no one reporting it? Where are the global networks? Some of them did send a reporter to Kerala hospitals to file a story, list lessons for India, also upload pictures. Meanwhile, going underreported is the hospitalization rate in Florida. It is 80 people per 100,000. It is over 55 per 100,000 in at least 4 American states: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana. This is according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and this may be an underestimation. Why do I say that? Because the love for fudging numbers does not end with the presidency of Donald Trump. The documents, the Democrats rather, are playing with numbers too. Take former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, for example. He hid COVID deaths. His administration has said that as of last week, a little over 43,000 New Yorkers died of the Wuhan virus. 43,000. Turns out the real number is well over 55,400. That is at least up by 12,000. Those in high office will try and hide real numbers because they have vested interests, dreams of re-election. But what about the press? How is it that the American media never flagged this undercounting? Look at CNN's headline. It is instead trying to cover up. CNN says the state of New York has, quote-unquote, adjusted the death toll. Adjusted? The US media is more concerned about the death toll outside its borders. In June, the Wall Street Journal said India had undercounted its death toll. It said Brazil was undercounting its dead. This is a New York-based website. In July, ABC said Russia has also underreported its death. We'll wrap with that. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks for watching.
Anvichu,